Hello and welcome to another book haul video, this time covering my acquisitions for November. Maybe not quite so exciting as either of the months accompanying this one. The month that this video comes out in December, of course, being Christmas, so next book haul is going to be pretty exciting for that. And then last month was my birthday, which means that book haul was pretty exciting as well. Well, last month being October, because I'm currently recording this at the very end of November. Either way, doesn't really matter or make much difference. This is going to be a little bit of a smaller haul compared to the last few of them, which is going to be nice, but even so, there's still a little bit too much to talk about to waste time rambling. Let's just jump right into the haul, talking about some of the things that I acquired over the course of the month from a few different locations, starting of course with a special edition of one of my favorites. If you see that shelf right up top, Sun Eater, and you see those Russian covers over here, yeah, something's missing from that compared to the last couple of videos. If you've noticed, that is because I got my lettered edition of the Empire of Silence Diamond edition. So this is what the tray case looks like for the lettered editions. If you haven't seen my unboxing video already, you'll notice there's nothing in here. That is because I do not currently have the book inside the tray case. It's because I also bought the normal numbered edition slipcase for display of whichever book I want to display at a time. So that's what that is. Of course, if you want to see the lettered edition, it doesn't have any of the text on the jacket. I bought the jacket with the text as well, just so I could have it. And then you can see, of course, in there's the signature with my lettered copy Y. And then there's, of course, the better copies, the illustrations and stuff lettered throughout, frontispieces and stuff and the like in the copy itself. I show off a couple of those in the little unboxing thing that I did for the lettered edition if you want to check that out. But I'm going to keep that there for now because that's all I really need to show off for here. But aside from that, I didn't actually really acquire that many physical items this month, so let's just kind of talk about the few of them that were there. The first, of course, being one that I actually got, like, this wasn't even a Black Friday sale, it was just a sale that happened south of the border, west of the sun, from Haruki Murakami, which had a sale as well as a coupon attached to it on Amazon. So I got this for like $5. I was like, you know what, if I'm gonna collect a few Murakami here and there, that's definitely a pretty good price to pick up a book, especially one that's pretty thin. So I grabbed this solely for the sake of just having it, even though I haven't actually read any Murakami yet, and hopefully plan to this year. We'll see how able I am to do that. The next item is a big thank you to King James, one of my friends, who decided to sell me and ship to me this Kingsbridge edition here, the evening and the morning, but it's all 4 books that are out in this edition. The Pillars of the Earth, which I talked about in a video 2 days ago, my monthly reading wrap up in TBR. If you want to see why I talk about it there, go ahead and check out that video. World Without End, which is one of the chunkier books I own now at this point. This thing is pretty heavy, actually, just holding up with one hand. And then A Column of Fire, which looks pretty short when you compare it to the rest, but still is somehow like 900 pages. It's by no means short, but it seems short compared to like A World Without End. This is kind of a series that I've had my eye on solely for how prolific and well known and kind of just how much people love Pillars of the Earth. For example, that book specifically is very well regarded. And I'm going to be popping on a read along for Pillars of the Earth starting at some point this month, which I guess kind of defeats the purpose of me telling you to go watch the video 2 days ago, but oh well, it is what it is. It's kind of the same thing here actually with this book as well. We Who Wrestle with God by Jordan Peterson, one of my most anticipated books of the year, which I had pre-ordered basically from the moment it was available to be pre-ordered. I really like the way that Peterson talks about theological concepts in accordance with the psychology and stories, and the way that he kind of ties threads together has always been something that's kind of fascinated me. I've actually been able to glean quite a bit from plenty of what he says here and there. And so this book is one of the ones that I really want to read. I actually plan to read it this month. So that's another reason to go check out the reading wrap up in TBR, except maybe not, because I've already told you most of my TBR for the month at this point, just with those couple of books. But yeah, I picked up We Who Wrestle with God day one, and I plan to read that very soon, just like I plan to read his other few books that I have owned as well. Next up, we're going to go ahead and jump over to another screen. Let me kind of move some of my tabs and windows around to make this a little bit more effective. My desktop here, the couple of audiobooks that I grabbed over the course of November. Of course, Hell's Wardens, which is The Wandering Inn book 14, the most recent release in that for the audiobooks. Picked that up because I've been collecting all of those, and at some point I would like to come back around and restart when the Volume 1 rewrite eventually comes out someday, maybe, hopefully. And then The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, A History of Nazi Germany, which was part of a sale, which I grabbed a couple of weeks ago. So I figured it would be worth picking up. So that is another one that I grabbed. But next up, we're going to talk about my digital Kindle purchases, which should theoretically go a little bit quicker and more smoothly than it has the last couple of months. To jump over here, starting off with a few more Guy Gavriel K additions to the library, which I'm surprised there were 3 of these to add over the course of the last month, but all 3 of these did have a sale. Lions of Alrasan actually specifically went for a sale for like $2 at some point in the month. Picking up any Guy Gavriel K book for less than $5 is pretty much a steal. These other 2 went on sale at some point shortly afterwards as well, so I grabbed all 3 of them for the sake of it. Next up was a little collection here, 3 novels of creeping terror as it's advertised, The Night Boat, Bale, and Bethany's Sin by Robert McCammon. Don't know anything about either of these 3 books specifically, however, but they're added to the Robert McCammon collection because they were cheap. Next, we'll move into a handful of genre fiction titles, which we'll discuss here. First, I picked up He Who Comes by Stuart G. Yates, which is the first book in a series of, I think, 5 Westerns. This one was free at one point. So I decided to grab it for the sake of, maybe acclimating myself to a little bit more of Western stories at one point in the future. I would like to do that. And I also would like to write a Western and dedicate that to my grandfather who recently passed. So He Who Comes seemed like a pretty good option to pick up for free. I did also pick up The Da Vinci Code up here by Dan Brown. I don't actually know a whole lot about Dan Brown's books, except the fact that some people like to kind of make fun of him because all of his books follow like the same formula or something. That's not something that's probably going to bother me because I only really plan to read The Da Vinci Code at any point in time. So I did pick that book up. It seems like a good enough time. And kind of following along the mystery thread, you also have The Silver Blood Promise, a sort of fantasy mystery thing, book 1 of a series, I believe, called The Last Legacy. Is that what it's called? By James Logan. This one released this year to pretty high acclaim, and I've had my eye on it ever since. When this went on sale, it was a pretty easy pickup as a result. Kind of continuing along a sort of fantasy thread, but also a little bit of mythology in there, is Breaking Hell by Miles Cameron, the 3rd book in this trilogy of The Age of Bronze. I now have all 3 of those books in the trilogy. It seems like a fun concept. I hope to get to that at some point in the nearish future. I also picked up Deathstalker, which is a sci-fi, I think this is space opera, but it's kind of a little bit more of a campy sort of style. This was one that was recommended to me by Words in Time, and I believe that was in one of the 2 collab videos that I've done with him, which are on the channel. If so, yeah, I am interested in checking this out. I'm not sure how much I want to read the whole series, but I definitely want to at least read this first book. It seems like a fun enough time. Continuing along the sci-fi thread, we jump over here now to Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, which is one that I'm very surprised I did not own already. And need I say any more about how legendary this book is, both from an emotional and a thematic standpoint? I hear it definitely wrecks a lot of people and look forward to reading this one someday. Hopefully pretty soon. I think one of my friends actually read this quite recently, and it was maybe his book of the month that month. Might be one of his top books of the year so far, and he's read that recently. So, it only encourages me even more to read the book. Next up is what might be a little bit more literary rather than genre, The Vegetarian. I don't actually know anything about this book besides the fact that a handful of friends have read it and liked it. No idea what it is though myself. I don't know anything about it. So I just kind of included it and grabbed it when it was on sale just because plenty of friends have read it and liked it, like I said. Next up is Black Mouth by Ronald Malfi, continuing my Malfi collection. I might have 4 or 5 of these by this author at this point. I'll continue to pick up his books on sale if I see them. This one has a pretty cool cover, kind of reminds me of Salem's Lot. I don't know if it's similar to Salem's Lot or anything like that. Considering that it's a Bram Stoker Award finalist, who knows? We'll see either way if I ever get to that one. Also, finally, as well, the final book I believe in this little section is Horns by Joe Hill, another one of his books. I haven't read any Joe Hill up to this point. Maybe someday here soon I will do that. But yeah, I collected several of his books at this point. This was just another one that went on sale today, if I'm not mistaken. So there's that. Next up, we'll move into a few short story collections that I want to talk about. The first one being a little bit more modern. It's Stephen Graham Jones's After the People Lights Have Gone Off. This one went on sale pretty recently, so I grabbed that to continue to bolster my SGJ collection. I also picked up Shirley Jackson's Dark Tales, which I was kind of surprised to find that The Lottery, which is, I believe, her most acclaimed story, is not a part of, but I'm not necessarily too concerned about that. Having any amount of short stories is pretty cool, and if I was still doing short story Sundays, this would be even cooler to have, but that is okay. I also got The Complete Stories pretty recently by Franz Kafka. I've never been super interested in reading Kafka, to be completely honest, but when this one went on sale and being a collection of short stories, I felt like that was kind of worth picking up, so I did so. Kind of same thing with T.S. Eliot, somebody who I've not necessarily been super intent upon reading, but when the collected poems went on sale, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll go ahead and grab the collected poems. Why not? Especially since Eliot is pretty legendary as far as poetry is concerned. Now let's move on to a few more lit fiction and classics in here. Starting off, of course, with Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which is kind of a weird cover on this one, but I did grab a free copy of this one at some point pretty recently, given that this is one of the few other Steinbeck books that at this point I have direct interest in. I felt like it was good enough to pick up. Far from the Madding Crowd is kind of a similar case to like T.S. Eliot and Franz Kafka, I guess, from the previous section by Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy is an author who I've never had a whole lot of intent to actually read, but when I saw a free copy of this one, I decided to grab it because I've heard plenty of good things about Hardy. I just don't know anything about this, so I was like, yeah, sure, let's just kind of grab it on a whim, basically, is what that was. And then Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. I recently collected, it was in one of the last two book hauls, I forget off the top of my head, another book that he wrote, and I had a couple people wondering why I hadn't picked up Name of the Rose yet. It's one that, for some reason, I don't have a lot of explicit interest in reading, but after several friends read it pretty recently and all really loved it, I'm like, sure, I'll give it a shot. So when this one went on sale, I decided to actually pick it up for that reason. Next up are a couple extra historical fiction sort of type of books. The first one being The War of the End of the World by Mario Vargas Llosa. I hope is how that's pronounced. It's probably pronounced a little bit different. I forget exactly which book this one was related to me as, because this covers the same topic as another book that I covered, I believe, in my top 10 strangest books on my TBR video, if I'm not mistaken, but I forget what that was. It's a historical fiction about some campaign, the Canudos campaign or something along those lines. I'm probably talking out my ass right now, but it was something along those lines, and it was on sale. It was cheap, pretty lengthy. I was like, cool cover as well. Let's just grab it. So I did that, and then continuing my James Michener collection as well with Hawaii here. This one like 1,500 pages for like $3. I was like, yeah, I'll take that. I really hope the Michener books end up being as good as he kind of seems to have a reputation for, because I've picked up several of the books at this point, and I would hate for them to all suck for them being as long as they are. Next up are a couple of historical non-fiction books, starting off with Blood and Thunder over here, the epic story of Kit Carson and the conquest of the American West. So basically a history of the Manifest Destiny era of American history, which is something that I've definitely been interested in learning a little bit more about. So I picked that book up for that reason. I also picked up Killing Kennedy by Bill O'Reilly, which, say what you will about Bill O'Reilly, I guess he's somewhat of a controversial figure, or someone that people make fun of for some reason. I personally have no idea why that is. I haven't bothered to look into it. But this book and Killing Lincoln as well were books that were pretty high on my TBR, that were pretty high interest to me back in high school when I was having trouble reading, so I didn't actually read them. I started Killing Lincoln at one point in time. I don't think I actually finished it, not because it was bad or because I wasn't enjoying it, but it's just the era of time when I wasn't really reading anything for the most part. But yeah, so I picked up Killing Kennedy when I saw that on sale pretty recently. And you'll notice the subtitle to the book, called The End of Camelot, is pretty similar to After Camelot here, and that is because the next book I picked up was After Camelot, a personal history of the Kennedy family from 1968 to present. Figured that would be pretty interesting given that it was a similar topic. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll grab that, because the Kennedys are kind of a family of interest really in American history. It's one that I want to learn a little bit more about. This book ought to help with that at some point. Continuing along this sort of biography train of thought, I also grabbed The Last Lion, which is a box set, which is what it says here, but a trilogy of books about Winston Churchill, which seemed really, really cool. And it's like 4,400 pages for like $4 when I saw this on sale. Yes, please, I'll take that many pages of biography about a figure I'm interested in for that price. That sounds pretty cool. So yeah, I picked that up. Next up, in a sort of World War II train of thought, is Stalingrad, The Fateful Siege, 1942 to 1948. I forget how long this book is. I believe it's over 600 pages on this particular event in World War II history. I was like, yeah, I will take that for sure. So I grabbed it. And then I've been continuing my collection of The Story of Civilization. This time volume 10 went on sale. And also you'll see the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire on this haul as well, by Edward Gibbon. I actually own all of these physically already, but when this went on sale for pretty cheap for all however many pages and length this is, I figured that would be worth doing in case I actually start reading it. It might be a little bit easier to read digitally than physically some of the time. So that's what that's for. Next up, we'll talk about a handful of contemporary nonfiction books to round out the haul here, starting off with In Order to Live, the autobiography of Yeonmi Park, which is a figure in political life that I actually greatly respect. I'm very surprised I did not own this book already. I actually thought I had a physical edition of this from years ago, but I must have never bought it. But yeah, so I own it now digitally, which is pretty nice. Always been kind of a bucket list book that I really want to get to. So I hope to do that at some point, as with all of these other books. Why else would I be collecting them? And then also, once again, continuing along the sort of biography train of thought, is A Marvelous Life, which is a biography of Stan Lee. This one's not too long, but seems pretty interesting. Stan Lee is, of course, a legendary figure, and definitely somebody who I'd be interested to learn more about, so I picked that up. And, you know, kind of continuing along that sort of writing and author train of thought, because Stan Lee, of course, was a great comic book writer. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is a book about writing. Break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles. Doesn't have to be about writing. I suppose it could probably be about anything, but given that he's a writer, that's probably a lot of what he focuses on. This book was recommended to me when I did a discussion pretty recently on the channel with Benjamin Lyer, author of The Failures, which is one of my favorite books of the year. He recommended this one, so I added it to my Kindle holdover wish list. When it went on sale and I saw that, I was like, I will pick that up for $1.50. Heck yes. So I did that. And then How to Build a Book Marketing Strategy was just another random free nonfiction book that was in there that I decided to pick up. There's a few of these sort of writing related nonfiction books that I picked up for free as of recent. But that is the end of the haul. Oh, hey, just interjecting here right in the middle of this, because I knew that recording this video before November was actually over on Black Friday weekend was a mistake. There's a couple more digital items here as well. Red Rising by Pierce Brown went on sale for just a couple bucks recently, and I don't actually own any of that series yet. And then Legends and Latte went on sale recently, even though it never goes on sale. I already owned Bookshops and Boned, whatever it's called, the sequel to this one already, and picked this one up to kind of go along with it. These two are the actual final ebooks I purchased in November. Thank goodness this isn't another 40+ minute video or whatever the other 2 or 3 of these have ended up being. Thank you guys for watching. If you did, there wasn't a whole lot to show off physically, but I hope there's still some other stuff on the list that intrigues you. One of these days I'm going to go through and actually organize the Kindle app in here to actually have it all done by authors, so I don't have to collect these in weird random ways for these videos. I can just go between authors and make it easier. Maybe I'll do that this month, given that I'm going to work on all of the month's videos this first weekend. Maybe I'll have time later in the month to do that. But thank you for watching. Nonetheless, like I said before, I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate all the support as always. Showed a little bit more restraint with my random pickups this time, which has been great. And I hope to see you guys in the next video, whatever that is. It seems like that's going to be next Tuesday, my review of Ruin by John Gwynne, third book in the Faithful and the Fallen. I'm excited to let you guys see that. But I'll be back then, and well, I guess technically the next video on the channel will be my Fortnite on the Isle this Sunday, my bi-weekly update. If you check those out, I appreciate it. If not, perfectly fine. Either way, I'll be back in the next video, and I hope to see you there.